I funded my nephew's entire college tuition, but my sister said it wasn't enough to make up for missing his graduation, so I made the decision to stop all payments, and now they're drowning in loans. The email came at 11:34 p.m. on a Thursday, right as I was reviewing quarterly projections for a client presentation. Subject line: "We need to talk about your priorities." I almost deleted it. My sister Lisa had a gift for dramatic timing, but something about the phrasing made my stomach clench. I opened it. 3 paragraphs of carefully crafted guilt, building to a single accusation that made my hands freeze on the keyboard. If you actually cared about Daniel, you would have been there for the most important day of his life. But I guess $127,000 doesn't buy love, does it? I read it twice, then a third time, waiting for the punchline that never came. She was serious, dead serious. And in that moment, staring at those words glowing against the dark screen, I realized my sister genuinely believed I owed her more than 6 figures of my own money, 4 years of financial sacrifice, and every shred of the future I'd postponed for her son. I'd been funding Daniel's college education since the day he got his acceptance letter to Northwestern, back when he was still posting TikToks about graduation parties, and Lisa was calling me in tears about student loans. That was August 2019, 4 months after my promotion to senior financial analyst at Berkshire Strategic Group. The timing felt like fate. Finally, I had the income to do something meaningful for my family. Lisa had raised Daniel alone since her divorce when he was 6, working double shifts as an ER nurse while trying to save for his future. When Daniel got into Northwestern's engineering program, she'd called me at work, voice cracking. "It's his dream school, but the financial aid package barely covers half. I don't know what to do." I remembered being 17 and getting into MIT, remembered watching my parents' faces fall as they calculated costs they couldn't meet. I'd ended up at state school instead, solid education, but not the dream. I wasn't going to let Daniel make that same compromise. "I'll cover it," I'd told her. Just like that. No hesitation. She'd argued, of course, insisted it was too much, but I'd already done the math. With my salary, my minimal expenses, and careful budgeting, I could swing roughly $31,750 per year for 4 years. Tuition, room, board, books, the works. "Family takes care of family," I'd said, echoing what our father used to tell us before he passed. "Daniel's brilliant. This is his shot." Lisa had cried, grateful tears, real ones, and promised she'd never forget it. Daniel had written me a thank you card in his messy 17-year-old handwriting. "Uncle Rob, you're literally changing my life. I'm going to make you proud." I'd stuck it on my fridge, where it stayed for the next 4 years, a reminder of why I ate ramen 3 nights a week and drove my 2011 Toyota into the ground instead of upgrading. The payments started in September 2019, direct wire transfers on the 1st of every month. I set up a dedicated savings account, automated the deposits, tracked every dollar in a spreadsheet with obsessive precision. Tuition, $57,256 per year. Room and board, $17,019. Books and supplies, roughly $1,800. Personal expenses, $4,200 annually. I rounded up to $32,000 per year to give him a cushion, money for emergencies or opportunities. That first year, I worked 70-hour weeks, took every overtime project, skipped the company retreat to Mexico. My colleagues thought I was gunning for partner track. Really, I was just funding my nephew's freshman year. I didn't tell anyone the real reason. It felt private, sacred even. This was between me and Daniel, uncle and nephew, the kind of generational investment that changes a family's trajectory. Daniel thrived at Northwestern. He'd call me every few weeks with updates, made the dean's list, joined the robotics club, got a research position with a professor studying renewable energy systems. Lisa would text me photos, Daniel at the engineering lab, Daniel with his project team, Daniel looking exhausted but happy during finals week. I'd wire the money, get a quick "Thanks, Uncle Rob" text from Daniel, and feel this deep satisfaction that I was doing something that mattered. My own life stayed small by design. I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in a decent but not flashy neighborhood, cooked most meals at home, and turned down dates because relationships felt expensive and complicated. My friends noticed I'd become boring, reliable, always available to help them move, but never free for spontaneous trips. I told them work was demanding. The truth was simpler. Every dollar I didn't spend on myself was a dollar securing Daniel's future. The cracks started showing sophomore year, subtle at first. Daniel's thank you texts got shorter, less frequent. The calls from Lisa shifted from grateful updates to casual mentions of expenses I hadn't anticipated. "Daniel needs a new laptop for his CAD classes. His old one can't handle the software. Can you cover it?" $2,000. He got invited to a summer engineering program in Berlin, but it's not covered by financial aid. This could really boost his resume. $3,500. I said yes every time, stretching my budget thinner, because these felt like investments in his success. I stopped contributing to my own retirement account. I canceled my gym membership and started running outside. Small sacrifices, I told myself. Temporary adjustments. Daniel was building a future. I was just treading water until he graduated, and I could refocus on my own life. Junior year, something shifted. Daniel stopped calling entirely. I'd reach out, text, email, voicemail, and get one-word responses days later. Busy. Studying. Later. Lisa explained he was overwhelmed with coursework, applying for internships, growing up. He's becoming independent, she said, almost proudly. That's what we wanted, right? But it stung. I'd sacrificed years of my life, and suddenly I was an inconvenience, a checkbox on his mental to-do list. I told myself it was normal, that college kids get absorbed in their own worlds. I kept sending the money, every first of the month, like clockwork, $2,666.67 hitting the account. By November of his junior year, I transferred $96,000. The running total haunted me during sleepless nights, not because I regretted it, but because I wondered if Daniel even remembered what that number represented. The internship offer came in March of his senior year. Google, Mountain View, summer position with a project team developing machine learning applications for energy grid optimization, $58 an hour, housing stipend, relocation bonus. Daniel posted about it on social media. I saw it on LinkedIn before he told me directly. When he finally called, his voice had this new confidence, almost arrogance. Uncle Rob, I got the Google offer. Pretty insane, right? I congratulated him, asked questions about the role, the team, his excitement. Then he dropped it. The stipend doesn't quite cover Bay Area rent, though. Could you float me like $5,000 for the security deposit and first month? I'll pay you back with my first paycheck. I felt something cold settle in my chest. $5,000 on top of the $128,000 I'd already committed, so he could take a paid internship that would launch him into a six-figure career. But I heard myself saying yes, because that's what I always did. Graduation was set for Sunday, June 11th, 2023. Lisa called me in March with the date, voice bright with anticipation. You'll be there, right? Daniel specifically asked if you were coming. It would mean the world to him. I checked my calendar. That weekend was the Berkshire Strategic Group Annual Partners Retreat, 3 days in Napa Valley, mandatory attendance for senior analysts being considered for promotion. I'd waited 5 years for this opportunity, worked every angle, sacrificed every weekend. Missing it would signal I wasn't serious about advancement. I explained this to Lisa, carefully, apologetically. I'll fly out the Friday before, spend the whole week celebrating with Daniel. We'll do a big dinner, whatever he wants. But I can't miss the retreat. My career depends on it. The silence on the other end stretched long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Then Lisa's voice came back, sharp and cold. So your job is more important than your nephew? Not a question. An accusation. I tried to explain the timing, the years of waiting, the fact that I'd literally funded Daniel's entire education, and surely that demonstrated my commitment more than attending a 3-hour ceremony. But Lisa wasn't hearing it. He's walking across that stage because of you, and you won't even be there to see it. Do you understand how that's going to feel for him? I felt the guilt like acid in my throat, but I held firm. I'll celebrate with him the whole week before. I'll be there in every way that matters. She hung up without saying goodbye. The argument festered for weeks. Lisa would text periodically, little jabs wrapped in casual conversation. Daniel's finalizing his graduation plans. Too bad you'll miss it. We're doing a family photo shoot after the ceremony. Wish you could be there. I stopped responding after the 5th message, recognizing emotional manipulation when I saw it. I'd spent $128,000 on Daniel's education, postponed my own life for 4 years, and apparently that counted for nothing if I couldn't sit through a graduation ceremony. The unfairness of it burned. I reached out to Daniel directly, sent him a long text explaining the situation, emphasizing how proud I was, how much I wanted to celebrate with him. He read it, the blue check marks confirmed as much, but never responded. That hurt worse than Lisa's anger. I flew to Chicago the week before graduation, arrived on Monday night with plans to stay through Thursday evening. I'd booked a hotel near campus, made reservations at Daniel's favorite restaurants, bought him a graduation gift I'd spent weeks choosing, a vintage Omega Speedmaster watch, the same model worn by Apollo astronauts, with an engraving on the back. To Daniel, reach for the stars. Your future is infinite. Uncle Rob. $4,000 I absolutely couldn't afford, charged to a credit card I'd opened specifically for the purchase. I figured we'd have 4 days together, just us, celebrating everything he'd accomplished. I texted him Sunday night confirming our Monday dinner reservation. No response. Texted again, Monday morning. Nothing. Called at noon. Voicemail. By Monday evening, sitting alone at the restaurant with 2 menus and 1 chair occupied, I felt the first real crack of anger beneath the hurt. I'd flown across the country, taken vacation days I'd been saving, spent money I didn't have, and Daniel couldn't even be bothered to show up or send a courtesy cancellation text. I paid for the glass of wine I'd ordered while waiting, left a generous tip out of embarrassment, and walked back to my hotel. The night air felt thick, oppressive. I tried calling again from my room. Voicemail. I texted Lisa. Is Daniel okay? He didn't show up for dinner. She responded 4 hours later. He's fine. Busy with graduation week activities. You know how it is. The casual dismissiveness made my hands shake. Wednesday afternoon, I drove to campus, parked near the engineering building, and waited for Daniel's advanced materials class to let out. I felt pathetic, a grown man ambushing his nephew outside a classroom, but I'd traveled 1,000 miles and spent thousands of dollars for time he apparently didn't want to give. When he emerged, backpack slung over one shoulder, laughing with 2 classmates, I barely recognized him. He'd grown taller, filled out, carried himself with the easy confidence of someone who'd never really struggled. I called his name. He turned, and I watched his expression shift from surprise to something that looked almost like annoyance. Uncle Rob, hey. No apology for missing dinner. No acknowledgement that I'd been trying to reach him for 3 days. I've been calling you, I said, trying to keep my voice level. We had reservations Monday night. He had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable. Yeah, sorry about that. Things have been crazy. Graduation week, you know. His friends hovered awkwardly a few feet away, clearly waiting for him. Can we grab coffee or something? I'm only here until Thursday, and I wanted to spend time with you before I fly back. Daniel glanced at his phone, frowned. I've got a group dinner thing tonight, and tomorrow's rehearsal, and then the ceremony prep. This week is kind of packed. The words hit like a physical blow. Packed. Too busy for the uncle who'd bankrolled his entire college experience. I felt something shift inside me, something hard and cold settling where warmth used to live. I brought you a graduation gift, I said quietly, pulling the watch box from my jacket pocket. His eyes lit up, the first genuine emotion I'd seen from him, and he reached for it. I let him take it, watched him open the box, saw his face transform when he saw the Omega. Holy shit, Uncle Rob, this is incredible. He turned it over, read the engraving, and for just a second, I saw a flicker of the kid who'd written me that thank you card 4 years ago. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, distracted. This is amazing. Thank you. Really. I gotta run, though. Group project meeting. I'll text you later, okay? He closed the box, tucked it under his arm, and was gone before I could respond, disappearing into the building with his friends, already laughing about something else. I stood there in the quad, tourists and students flowing around me, and felt the full weight of my own stupidity. 4 years. $128,000. Countless hours of budget spreadsheets and declined opportunities and ramen dinners, and telling myself it was worth it because I was investing in family, in Daniel's future, in something bigger than my own comfort. And to him, I was an inconvenience. A source of money who'd shown up at an awkward time and needed to be managed with polite deflection and empty promises to text later. That text never came. I waited in my hotel room Wednesday night, phone beside me, watching notifications that never arrived. Thursday morning, I checked out early and drove to the airport. 3 days of vacation wasted. Thousands of dollars spent on a trip that had yielded exactly 15 minutes of Daniel's distracted attention. The graduation ceremony happened without me. I was in Napa Valley, networking with partners, presenting strategic analyses, playing the corporate game I'd neglected for 4 years. My phone stayed silent. No photos from Lisa, no acknowledgement from Daniel that he'd walked across that stage in the education I'd funded. Sunday evening, flying home from San Francisco, I felt hollowed out. Not angry yet, just empty. I'd missed the ceremony to attend the retreat, and somehow I'd ended up with neither the familial connection I'd sacrificed for, nor the professional advancement I'd bet on. The partners had been polite but distant, clearly favoring analysts who'd been networking for years while I'd been wiring money to my ungrateful nephew. The email arrived that Thursday, 11 days after graduation, as I sat in my apartment eating takeout and reviewing the damage to my finances. I'd accumulated $23,000 in credit card debt. My retirement account sat nearly empty. My emergency fund had been drained to cover the final year's expenses. I was 34 years old and financially devastated, with nothing to show for it but a nephew who couldn't spare 15 minutes for coffee and a sister who thought I'd failed my family by missing a ceremony. Lisa's email was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive accusation, 3 paragraphs building to that final gut punch. If you actually cared about Daniel, you would have been there for the most important day of his life. But I guess $127,000 doesn't buy love, does it? I stared at that number. She'd even tallied it, apparently, kept a running calculation of my financial contribution, while simultaneously deciding it wasn't enough. The implication was clear. The money meant nothing without my physical presence at a 3-hour event. 4 years of sacrifice, reduced to a transactional failure because I'd prioritized the career I'd nearly destroyed funding her son's education. I felt something snap inside me, clean and final. I'd spent 4 years being the family's ATM, and the moment I'd set a single boundary, attending a career-critical retreat instead of a graduation ceremony, I'd been reclassified as selfish, uncaring, a disappointment. The money apparently didn't matter. My sacrifices didn't matter. Only my absence mattered. I opened my laptop and pulled up the payment records. $128,000 transferred over 4 years, exactly as I'd calculated. But Daniel had 1 more year left. He'd taken a 5th year to complete a dual degree in mechanical engineering and computer science, something he'd decided junior year without consulting me about the additional $32,000 in costs I'd implicitly agreed to cover. I'd already set aside the money, scraped together through a combination of credit and desperation. Senior year payments were scheduled to start in August, 3 months away. I looked at that transfer schedule, then back at Lisa's email, and made a decision that felt like stepping off a cliff. I typed my response carefully, editing 3 times to remove emotion and leave only facts. Lisa, I'm sorry you feel I didn't prioritize Daniel's graduation appropriately. You're right that $128,000 doesn't buy love. It was never meant to. It was meant to buy Daniel an education and opportunities I never had. Since my financial contribution apparently doesn't demonstrate care in the way you and Daniel need, I'm canceling the remaining year of funding. Daniel's smart, resourceful, and about to graduate with a degree that should position him well for student loans if he chooses to complete the 5th year. I wish him all the best in his future endeavors. I attached a PDF showing every transfer I'd made, dates and amounts, a final accounting of money she'd apparently been tracking anyway. Then I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The response came 17 minutes later, all caps, no punctuation, pure panic. You can't be serious. Daniel needs that money he already registered for classes. His loans won't cover a 5th year. This is insane over missing one ceremony. I didn't respond. 3 more emails followed over the next hour, each more desperate than the last. Lisa called 6 times. I let every call go to voicemail, listened to her messages escalate from angry to pleading to threatening. You're ruining his life over your ego. How can you do this to your own nephew? Dad would be ashamed of you. That last one almost broke me. Our father had been the kindest man I'd ever known, and the idea that he'd see my decision as shameful made my chest ache. But I thought about what he'd actually taught us: self-respect, boundaries, the difference between helping and enabling. I thought he'd understand. Daniel called on Friday afternoon. I answered, curious what he'd say, whether he'd acknowledge any of this or just demand I restore the funding. Uncle Rob. His voice was tight, controlled. Mom told me what you did. This is really messed up. Not an apology for ghosting me in Chicago. Not recognition of the $128,000 I'd already given him. Just accusation. You're seriously going to derail my entire degree plan because you're mad about graduation? I let the silence stretch, wondering if he'd fill it with anything approaching self-awareness. He didn't. I need that money, Uncle Rob. I can't get loans for a 5th year at these rates. You can't just pull the funding 3 months before school starts. Actually, I can, I said quietly. There was never a contract, Daniel. Just family helping family. But family goes both ways. You couldn't find 15 minutes for coffee when I flew across the country to celebrate with you. You ghosted me for 3 days, took the expensive watch I bought you, and disappeared. Your mother thinks $128,000 doesn't demonstrate love because I missed a ceremony to attend a career retreat. So, yeah, I'm pulling the funding. You're a brilliant engineer with a Google internship on your resume. You'll figure it out. His breathing got harsh on the other end of the line. This is because of graduation? Are you kidding me? That's so petty. Petty. The word hung between us, and I felt something like clarity. This was how they'd framed it in their minds, not as a consequence of years of taking me for granted, but as a tantrum over one missed event. I'd been reduced to a melodramatic villain in their narrative, the selfish uncle who withdrew support over a minor slight. Think whatever you need to think, Daniel. The funding stops now. Good luck with your 5th year. I ended the call before he could respond, blocked his number, blocked Lisa's number, and sat in the sudden silence of my apartment feeling lighter than I had in years. Guilty, yes. Sad, absolutely. But also free. The social media campaign started within days. Lisa posted on social media, carefully worded to avoid direct accusation but heavy with implication. Devastated that family can sometimes put conditions on love. My son worked so hard, and now his education is in jeopardy because someone decided to withdraw support over a missed event, praying for a miracle. Daniel shared it, added his own commentary. Wild how people can be so generous and then take it all back over something petty. Guess I learned who I can actually count on. My phone exploded with messages from extended family, friends I hadn't talked to in years, even former colleagues. Most assumed I'd wronged them. Some asked for my side. I didn't respond to any of it, just muted the notifications and waited for the storm to pass. If you are enjoying this story already, please subscribe to see more stories like this. My cousin Angela called, one of the few family members who'd always seen through Lisa's dramatics. Okay, I saw the posts. What actually happened? I told her everything. The 4 years of payments, the ghosting in Chicago, Lisa's email, the decision to stop funding. Angela was quiet for a long moment. Jesus, Rob, $128,000? I confirmed. Another pause. And they're mad at you? For missing graduation? I laughed, bitter. Apparently the money doesn't count if I don't show up to applaud. Angela swore creatively. I'm calling Lisa. This is garbage. I asked her not to, said I'd made my peace with it, but I knew she would anyway. Angela had a way of cutting through family politics with surgical precision. August 1st came and went without a transfer. I left the dedicated savings account open, watched the balance sit there untouched. $8,000 I'd already set aside for Daniel's fall semester, money that now felt like evidence of my own foolishness. Part of me wanted to send it anyway, to prove I wasn't the villain they'd painted me as. But the larger part, the part that was tired of being used, kept my hands off the keyboard. Daniel had choices: take out loans, defer the 5th year and work, petition Northwestern for additional aid, or drop the dual degree and graduate with the mechanical engineering degree he'd already completed. These were adult decisions, and at 22, he was capable of making them. The panicked calls resumed in mid-August when Daniel's tuition bill came due. Lisa left voicemails sobbing about loan interest rates, about how Daniel couldn't afford to defer because he'd already accepted a full-time offer from Google starting the following summer, about how I was destroying his carefully planned timeline. I felt a flicker of sympathy. I'd never wanted to hurt them, just to stop being hurt by them. But I held firm. The boundary was set. They'd shown me exactly how much I mattered when the money stopped flowing. Not at all. I wasn't obligated to fund an additional year, especially not after being told my $128,000 didn't buy love. September brought a new development. My phone rang from an unknown number, and instinct made me answer. Robert Thorne? A professional female voice, clipped and official. This is Patricia Velasquez with the Office of Student Financial Services at Northwestern University. I'm calling regarding Daniel Morrison's account. My stomach dropped. They'd used my sister's married name, the one Daniel still carried. I'm not a parent or guardian, I said carefully. I'm his uncle. A pause. Mr. Thorne, we have records showing you've made significant payments toward Daniel's education over the past 4 years. We're calling because his account is now severely delinquent, and he's listed you as a financial sponsor on his aid applications. The words hit like ice water. Financial sponsor. I'd never agreed to be listed as anything official, never signed documents, never made legal commitments. I made voluntary payments as a family member, I said slowly. There was no formal agreement. I'm not responsible for his debts. Another pause, and I heard papers shuffling. Mr. Thorne, I'm looking at Form 8863, Educational Assistance Declaration, signed by you in August 2019. It lists you as Daniel Morrison's primary educational sponsor, committing to fund all qualified expenses for the duration of his undergraduate enrollment. This is a legally binding document. My vision tunneled. I'd never signed anything. I'd just been wiring money. I never signed any form, I said, voice tight. Send me a copy. Email it now. Patricia rattled off my email address, the right one, and said the document would arrive within minutes. I stayed on the line, laptop open, refreshing my inbox. The email appeared, scanned PDF, Northwestern letterhead, Form 8863, dated August 15, 2019. I opened it and felt my blood turn cold. There was my signature at the bottom, clear as day, above my typed name and social security number, except I'd never seen this document before in my life. I'd signed nothing except the wire transfer forms at my bank. This is forged, I said, hearing the shake in my own voice. I never signed this document. I never agreed to be a legal sponsor. Someone copied my signature. Patricia's voice went carefully neutral, the tone of someone who's heard excuse before. Mr. Thorne, if you're claiming fraud, you'll need to file a formal dispute with our office and potentially involve local authorities. However, I should inform you that based on this document, you have a legal obligation to fulfill the financial commitment. Daniel's account currently has an outstanding balance of $31,800 for fall semester tuition and fees. If this isn't resolved within 30 days, the debt will be sent to collections, and legal action may be pursued against you as the guarantor. I hung up and immediately called my bank, hands shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. I needed documentation of every transfer I'd made, needed to prove I'd been making voluntary payments without any legal obligation. The bank representative pulled up my records, confirmed the transfers, and offered to send official statements. Then I called a lawyer, Mitchell Greenbaum, a friend from college who practiced contract law. I explained the situation in rapid-fire sentences, sent him the forged document. He called back within an hour, voice grim. Rob, this is fraud, clear-cut. The signature matches your wire transfer documents close enough that they probably traced it, but you never signed this specific form. Question is, who did? The answer was obvious, but I didn't want to believe it. I pulled up my email archives, searched for anything from August 2019, the month I'd agreed to fund Daniel's education. There, an email from Lisa, subject line, Northwestern Financial Aid Forms, with an attachment. Rob, the school needs some documentation about outside financial support for Daniel's aid package. Can you print this, sign it, and send it back to me? I'll handle submitting it to the financial aid office. Thank you again for everything you're doing for him. I'd never opened the attachment. I'd assumed it was some informal letter of support, something between family members. I'd deleted the email and forgotten about it. But Lisa had access to documents with my signature. I'd signed birthday cards, holiday cards, the title transfer when I'd given her my old car 3 years ago. She could have traced my signature onto the Northwestern form, submitted it without my knowledge, and locked me into a legal obligation I'd never agreed to. The realization made me physically ill. My own sister had forged my signature to trap me into funding Daniel's education, not out of trust that I'd follow through, but as insurance that I couldn't back out. And now that I had, the legal hammer was dropping exactly as she'd planned. Mitchell worked fast. Within 3 days, he'd filed a fraud complaint with Northwestern, provided evidence that I'd never seen or signed the original document, and demanded they remove me as Daniel's financial sponsor. The university launched an internal investigation, which meant Patricia Velasquez calling me back with more questions. Where was I on August 15, 2019? Did I have any documentation proving I wasn't in Chicago that day? Had I ever given Lisa permission to sign documents on my behalf? I provided everything they requested. Work records showing I'd been in New York, credit card statements proving I'd bought lunch in Manhattan that day, email chains demonstrating I'd had no knowledge of the form. Patricia's voice grew more sympathetic with each call. The investigation took 6 weeks. 6 weeks of my life suspended in legal limbo, waiting to see if I'd be held responsible for $31,800 I'd never agreed to pay, for a forgery I'd never authorized. Daniel called twice from unblocked numbers, screaming about how I was destroying his life over a technicality, how I was hiding behind lawyers instead of just paying what I owed. I didn't engage. Lisa sent emails mixing threats with emotional appeals. Dad would be disgusted by what you're doing to your own nephew. Followed an hour later by, please, Rob, I'll do anything. Daniel needs this money. I made a mistake with the form, but you were going to pay anyway, so what's the harm? The harm, I didn't respond, was fraud. The harm was betrayal. The harm was 4 years of trust violated with a forged signature. October 12th, Patricia Velasquez called with the results. Mr. Thorne, our investigation has concluded that the signature on Form 8863 was not authentic. We've removed you as Daniel Morrison's financial sponsor, and you have no legal obligation to Northwestern University. However, she paused, and I braced for whatever came next. We've reported the fraud to local authorities in Illinois. The Cook County State's Attorney's Office is reviewing the case for potential criminal charges. You'll likely be contacted by a detective in the coming weeks. I thanked her, hung up, and sat in the silence of my apartment, feeling nothing close to vindication. My sister had committed fraud. The woman who'd raised me, who'd cried on my shoulder when her husband left, who'd called me her hero for funding Daniel's education, she'd forged my signature to trap me in a legal obligation. Detective Lawrence Kimura from the Cook County Sheriff's Office called on October 19th. 15 years in financial crimes, he explained, mostly check fraud and identity theft. Mr. Thorne, I've reviewed the Northwestern University complaint. The signature analysis is pretty clear. Someone traced your signature onto that form. University records show the form was submitted via email from your sister's account. I need to ask you directly. Do you want to press charges? The question hung in the air. Pressing charges meant potential criminal penalties for Lisa, meant blowing up what remained of our family, meant Daniel learning his mother had forged documents to control me. Not pressing charges meant letting fraud slide, meant no accountability, meant they'd know they could violate me without consequence. Yes, I said. I want to press charges. Detective Kimura acknowledged my decision, explained the next steps. Formal complaint filing, possible grand jury if the state's attorney decided to prosecute, the whole legal machinery grinding into motion. He warned me it would get ugly, that family fraud cases always did. I told him I understood. I'd already lost my family. Now I just wanted the truth on record. He said he'd be in touch, hung up, and I added his contact to my phone. Detective Kimura, fraud case. The label felt surreal. My sister, the fraud suspect. My nephew, collateral damage in a case I'd never wanted to be part of. Lisa was arrested on November 3rd, 2023, charged with forgery and fraud. I learned about it from Angela, who'd seen the local news coverage. Minor story, quick blurb about ER nurse arrested for educational fraud scheme. The word scheme made it sound premeditated, calculated. Maybe it was. Maybe Lisa had always planned to trap me, had always seen me as a resource to be exploited rather than a brother who'd sacrifice anything for her and Daniel. The thought made me ache. Angela said Lisa was released on bail within hours, that she was maintaining the story that it had been a misunderstanding, that I'd given verbal permission for her to handle the paperwork. Her lawyer was already spinning it as a family dispute blown out of proportion by an ungrateful brother. Daniel posted on social media the day of Lisa's arrest, long rant about corrupt systems and family betrayal. My uncle is literally prosecuting my mother for trying to help me get an education. He donated money, his choice, and now he's using the legal system to punish us for not being grateful enough. This is what happens when people prioritize ego over family. The post went viral in his network. Hundreds of comments supporting him, calling me names I won't repeat, constructing a narrative where I was the villain using privilege and lawyers to destroy a single mother and her struggling son. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd destroyed my own finances to fund Daniel's education, and now I was being painted as the privileged oppressor. The preliminary hearing was set for January 14th, 2024. I'd have to testify, explain the whole situation to a judge, watch my sister and nephew sit in the courtroom while I detailed their betrayal. Mitchell prepared me extensively. Stick to facts, show no emotion, answer only what's asked. The prosecutor is building a fraud case, he said. Your job is to demonstrate clear lack of consent for that form. Don't get drawn into the family drama. But it was all family drama, every bit of it. The fraud was just the mechanism Lisa had used to enforce what she'd always expected, unlimited access to my money and gratitude for the privilege of giving it. I didn't sleep the night before the hearing. I kept replaying the last 4 years, looking for the moment I should have seen this coming. Should have been the first forged signature, the increasing demands, Daniel's gradual ghosting? Or had I been doomed from the start, marked as the family ATM the moment I'd offered to pay for college? At 3:47 a.m., I gave up on sleep and wrote out a timeline. Every payment, every demand, every missed call, every promise broken. The document ran 16 pages. I didn't bring it to court. Mitchell said it wasn't relevant, but writing it gave me clarity. I hadn't been paranoid. I'd been systematically exploited. The courthouse was smaller than I expected, less dramatic. I arrived early, watched Lisa and Daniel enter with their lawyer, some private attorney they'd apparently hired, which raised questions about where they'd found money for legal fees but not for Daniel's tuition. Daniel wouldn't look at me. Lisa stared straight ahead, jaw set, the same expression she'd worn when our parents had caught her lying as kids, stubborn defiance masking guilt. The hearing itself was procedural, mostly lawyers arguing about evidence admissibility. I testified for maybe 20 minutes, confirmed my signature on my bank documents, confirmed I'd never signed the Northwestern form, confirmed I'd never given Lisa permission to sign on my behalf. The prosecutor showed the signature comparison analysis, my real signatures versus the traced forgery, different pressure points, slightly different pen angles, obvious to experts, if not to casual observers. Lisa's attorney argued it was a misunderstanding, that she genuinely believed she had permission, that the family had a casual arrangement about the funding. The prosecutor countered with email evidence showing I'd explicitly not engaged with the form, that Lisa had submitted it without my knowledge, that she'd hidden the legal obligation from me for 4 years until I needed to be controlled. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judith Alvarez, 23 years on the bench according to the nameplate, reviewed the evidence with obvious skepticism. Ms. Morrison, did you or did you not submit a financial sponsorship form to Northwestern University bearing your brother's signature without his direct knowledge or consent? Lisa's attorney objected to the framing. Judge Alvarez repeated the question. Lisa answered quietly. I signed the form on his behalf, yes, but he'd agreed to pay for Daniel's college. Verbal agreement to make voluntary payments, Judge Alvarez said, is not the same as written commitment to legal financial sponsorship. Did Mr. Thorne know you were signing his name to a binding legal document? Silence. Then, no, Your Honor. The judge set trial for April, denied the defense's motion to dismiss, and ordered Lisa not to contact me directly. I left the courthouse feeling hollowed out. My sister had just admitted in court to forging my signature. There was no walking back from this. Whatever family relationship had survived until now was officially dead. Daniel's financial situation imploded over the following months. Without my funding and with Northwestern demanding payment for his 5th year, he'd taken out private student loans at brutal interest rates, 8.9% variable rate on $38,000. He'd also maxed out 2 credit cards trying to cover living expenses. Google rescinded his full-time offer. I learned this from Angela, who'd stayed in touch with some of Lisa's friends. Apparently, the company had run a background check and found the ongoing legal case, decided it was too much drama for a new hire. Daniel ended up deferring his 5th year, taking a mid-level engineering job at a manufacturing firm in Milwaukee, making $62,000 yearly while trying to manage loan payments that would haunt him for decades. The irony was crushing. I'd tried to give him a debt-free start, and my sister's fraud had buried him in worse debt than if I'd never helped at all. The trial started April 8, 2024. Jury trial, Cook County Circuit Court, fraud and forgery charges carrying potential penalties of up to 3 years. I sat in the gallery every day, watched prosecutors present the evidence, signature analysis, email records, Northwestern's testimony about the forged document, my bank statements showing voluntary payments. Lisa's defense maintained it was all a misunderstanding, that families handle finances informally, that I was vindictively prosecuting her for stopping payments I'd chosen to make. They painted me as wealthy and cruel, her as a struggling single mother trying to help her son. The jury saw through it. 3 days of deliberation, and they came back with guilty verdicts on both counts. Sentencing was set for June. Lisa faced possible prison time, though her attorney argued for probation, given her clean record and employment as an ER nurse. The prosecutor pushed for accountability, pointed out the premeditated nature of the fraud, the years of deception. I was asked if I wanted to give a victim impact statement. Mitchell advised against it. Too emotional, might make me look vindictive. But I wrote one anyway, just in case I changed my mind. 3 pages about trust and betrayal, about sacrificing 4 years of my life for a nephew who couldn't spare 15 minutes, about a sister who'd reduced me to a resource instead of a person. I never delivered it. On the morning of sentencing, I told the prosecutor I'd said everything I needed to say through the legal process itself. Judge Alvarez sentenced Lisa to 18 months probation, 200 hours community service, restitution of $2,500 to cover my legal fees, and a permanent fraud conviction on her record. No jail time, which part of me resented and part of me felt relieved about. She was still my sister, even after everything. Daniel was in the courtroom, heard the whole thing, watched his mother become a convicted criminal because she'd forged documents to control me. I wondered if he understood yet, if he'd connected the dots between his mother's crime and his current mountain of debt. Probably not. People rarely accept that their own choices led to their consequences. I didn't attend the sentencing. I sent Mitchell as my proxy, asked him to text me the results. When his message came through, probation, restitution, no jail, I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no relief, nothing. Justice had been served in the legal sense, but I'd lost my family, damaged my nephew's future, and spent a year of my life in courtrooms and legal meetings. The money I'd set aside for Daniel's 5th year, that $8,000 still sitting in the dedicated account, I donated to a scholarship fund for first-generation college students at my local state university. I'd wanted to invest in someone's education, to make the kind of difference I'd imagined making for Daniel. Better it go to students who'd appreciate it. Months passed. I rebuilt my life slowly, painfully. Paid down the credit card debt, rebuilt my emergency fund, started contributing to retirement again. Made new friends, dated someone I actually liked, took a vacation to Iceland I'd been postponing for 5 years. My career recovered, got promoted to associate director in September 2024, 8 months after the trial ended. Turned out being present and focused on work instead of constantly stressed about family drama made me a better analyst. Who knew? I stopped checking social media for updates about Lisa or Daniel, blocked anyone who tried to guilt me about the legal case. Set boundaries with extended family. We could have relationships, but we didn't discuss Lisa, Daniel, or the trial. Some people respected that. Others drifted away. I let them. Angela called in December 2024 with an update I hadn't asked for. Daniel had moved back to Chicago, was living with Lisa while trying to finish his degree part-time at a community college to save money, working full-time at an automotive parts manufacturer. The dual degree dream was dead. The Google offer was gone. His student loan payments were eating 30% of his income. He'd posted something on social media about learning who your real family is, with obvious subtext about me. Angela asked if I wanted to reach out, try to repair things. I asked her why I'd do that. She didn't have a good answer. It's February 2026 now. I'm 36, finally financially stable again, living a life that actually belongs to me instead of being spent funding someone else's dreams. Sometimes I think about Daniel, wonder if he finished that degree, if he's still buried under loan debt, if he ever understood what actually happened. Sometimes I think about Lisa, about whether she tells herself she was trying to help or whether she admits, in quiet moments, that she'd been willing to commit fraud to control me. Mostly, I don't think about them at all. I've built a new life, smaller, but mine, with people who value me for more than my bank account. Last week, a letter arrived. No return address, but I recognized Daniel's handwriting from the thank you card that's long since left my fridge. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won. Inside, 3 paragraphs, handwritten on notebook paper. An apology, sort of. Acknowledgement that he'd handled things poorly in college, that he'd been immature and ungrateful. Not quite an admission of wrongdoing, but closer than I expected. The last paragraph was the kicker. I'm finally finishing my engineering degree this May at DePaul. I know you won't come to graduation, and I understand why, but I wanted you to know that the education you started funding changed my life, even if everything fell apart. I'm sorry for my part in how things ended. I hope you're doing well. Daniel. I read it 3 times, waiting to feel something. Anger, maybe, or vindication, or even the faint pull of familial obligation. What I felt was tired. Tired of being the person they reached out to when they needed something. Money, forgiveness, absolution for treating me like garbage. The letter was about Daniel's needs again, his need to feel less guilty, his need to believe the education changed his life, even though it had objectively destroyed mine for 4 years. His need for me to acknowledge his half-apology and offer some kind of closure. I put the letter in a drawer and haven't responded. Maybe I will eventually. Probably I won't. Because here's what I learned. Generosity without boundaries isn't love. It's self-destruction. I'd been so desperate to be the good uncle, the family hero, the person who saved Daniel from the struggles I'd faced, that I'd let myself be used until there was nothing left but resentment. The $128,000 I spent didn't buy me love or respect or even basic consideration. It bought me the privilege of being blamed when I finally said no. Lisa's fraud conviction and Daniel's loan debt aren't justice, not really. They're just the natural consequences of people who confused my kindness for weakness and my boundaries for betrayal. I hope Daniel finishes his degree. I hope he builds a good career. I hope the loans get paid off eventually. But those are his problems now, his life to navigate. I've got my own life to rebuild, my own future to fund. And this time, I'm investing in someone who actually appreciates it, me. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.